Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Game Over Ottawa. Back for season two. Maude and Charlie here once again. How are you doing tonight, Charlie?
I mean, all things considered, I think I'm doing pretty great. We'll get into the game in a second, but more than anything, I'm just thrilled to be back for another season of Game Over.
Me
And
too, me too.
I've been counting down the days since I think I probably got through May enjoying time off, and then by the time June rolled around, I was like, you know what, I'm ready for season two. So
It was damn near 6 months without any Sens hockey. Honestly, I
brutal.
feel like it went by kind of quickly for me, but when I think about it, that's a long ass time. That's what happens when you don't make the playoffs at all. You don't even get even just an extra week like the teams that get swept in the first round get. Maybe we'll get there this year, but who knows? Especially based off of this first game, it seems like there are going to be some issues. But I guess we should just jump into it, eh?
Yeah, yeah. We'll talk about this game for as long as we have to.
Yeah, since it's been so long since our last episode as well, we're also going to get into a lot of the off-season stuff that we haven't really had a chance to talk about on the show. And I think some of them should relate into tonight's game pretty well too, especially like I think we'll just get into it right away is that Matthew Joseph has been the favorite to be traded off of this team, and he was probably Ottawa's best skater tonight, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, no doubt. No doubt at all. He looked phenomenal. I don't know if he came into camp knowing that like, everyone's like, "Oh, I'm the guy that should be traded" or something like that, but he's been unbelievable. Honestly, like okay, I don't want to like paint broad strokes or anything right away, but honestly, like I think everybody on the team was more or less like okay, except for Joseph. Like I think honestly, he's the only one that consistently impressed me this game.
Me
The
too.
rest of the team I was pretty lukewarm on tonight.
I'll give a little shout out to Parker Kelly as well, getting that goal since he's not usually much of a goal scorer. It was very funny that both of our first two goals this season were from Joseph and Kelly, who probably I think they combined for like 4 goals total last year or something like that. So
That
good
sounds
for
about
both
right.
of them tonight. But yeah, like you said, other than Joseph and maybe Kelly, like everyone else tonight was between like average to bad, I thought. Like I didn't think anyone was truly like really bad, but it wasn't the best from our top guys, and it really showed with some stretches of play where the Sens were just getting dominated and Carolina was able to take over.
Yeah, I don't know. Preseason feels like it's like 3 months long, and I don't know. Maybe every team's fan base feels this way, but like it felt like holy shit. Like, did the Sens need like an extra 3 months of preseason? Like,
Oh
holy
God.
shit. It's like I don't know. Everyone looked like they were slow. Except I don't know. Hurricanes looked pretty sweet. From the very beginning, they looked like they were in mid season form. I think.
It's funny too because a 6-2 record in the preseason, and the only two losses were against Montreal both times where we were playing like our absolute, not even our B team, but our C team. And you mentioned like the preseason feeling too long. Like after those back-to-back shutouts against Pittsburgh and Winnipeg, I was like, ah, yeah, we're good. We don't need any more
Yeah.
preseason. But apparently, maybe they could have used a few more warm-up games. But I think just the main thing is that the Sens didn't play any teams nearly as good as Carolina in the preseason, especially when a lot of teams are not icing their full lineups in many of the games. So it was just a case of a much tougher opponent here tonight that exposed some of the Sens' weaknesses.
A tougher opponent and just like not showing up as well. Honestly, like most of the team just didn't show up.
Hmm.
I don't know if there's anyone you want to talk about specifically on the negative side because I think we're done with the positive side, just talking about Joseph and
Yeah, there
Kelly.
wasn't much.
Yeah,
Um, I feel like I feel like I know who you have in mind for who you would name as a big
really.
negative tonight. I feel like we just have to say Travis Hamonic.
Oh, he wasn't even like one of the worst ones in my mind.
Okay, because I
Oh,
thought he
I
had a
mean, still
very
bad.
poor
Like
game. Yeah.
delay of game penalty, all that. I mean, it's Hamnick. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, you're just like, yeah, that's usual Hamonic behavior.
Yeah, no, that's mid season form Hamnick. That's that's he's ready. He,
Yeah, but he's already in peak form. But who did you think was
yeah.
uh, was not so great tonight?
So I'll start with like a very middling player for tonight, I think, as far as like just like a little bit in the really bad, but also kind of anyway, I'm rambling. I'm just gonna say like Corpusalo,
Hmm.
up until those last two goals looked great. Like he made a bunch of saves he had no business making, and then just gave up two just like complete softballs. As soon as the game was tied. And to be fair, I mean the Sens had no business being in the game at that point when it was 3-3. Like there was no reason that the Sens should have been like in that spot. They did not play well enough to be tied with the Hurricanes that late. But and like I mean on the I think it was a Slavin goal was the fifth goal, right? So on
Yeah.
that one, Sanderson played that one a little bit weak, sure, but that's still a complete softball that Corpusalo should have had. The Brady Shea shot, I mean, he just missed it. Like he just missed it with his glove. So and I don't want to like pile on the dude because again, he made some phenomenal saves. Like he looked great for a good chunk of the game. Just those last two, just those last two, just looked terrible on those.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, and it sucks because I was feeling really confident in Corpusalo's performance,
Yeah.
or like pretty much all the way till the end of the second period. Like even when it was 2-1, I thought the first three goals really he had no chance on. They were all like inexcusable defensive breakdowns. So the whole time I was just like, well, it's over 30 shots, at the beginning of the third period, three goals against. It's not bad considering. They weren't really ones that I would blame Corpusalo for, but then yeah, just the two stinkers in the third period, they were both ugly ones. I guess like you can excuse him a little bit because it's first regular season game with a new team, and as a goalie you still got to learn how this team plays, and what their defensive issues might be, and how to cover for them.
God.
But but like I almost kind of feel bad for Corpusalo having to learn this system that we're playing because it's a mess. It's always been a mess. It seems like it hasn't really improved too much from last year, at least in the early goings here.
There's no like it doesn't even look like they have a defensive system. Like this, like it looks like nobody knows who their man is. It looks like no one knows who to cover. Um, and I think perfect example is granted, they were shorthanded at the time, but that bunting goal, just wide
Yeah,
open, had all the
ridiculous.
time in the world. Dude, dude could have like done a couple spins before he put the puck in. Like there's
uh,
awful positioning. I think who was on D for that? I think it was Hamnick and Sanderson, and
yeah, they
they
both went
both
up
pinched
high.
up. They were
Yeah,
yeah, just too much, and just left the guy, just left Bunting completely on his own. That one you can't put on Corpusella at all. That's complete. That's just a defensive
definitely.
breakdown,
Hmm.
PK or not. I don't care. That's inexcusable the positioning on that. And then yeah, I guess the other two goals are I mean as much as they can be, they're fine in my books. I think really. I mean like one you can't blame on Corpusalo, the other two you absolutely can. And as far as the other ones, the setup on the Teravainen goal was just, I mean, like there's nothing Corpusalo can do. Granted, Teravainen
No
was pretty
chance.
wide open, so that might also be an issue. I didn't have as much issue with that as the bunting goal. Um, yeah. Anyway, it just feels like, and before we started, I was like, I'm just gonna do my best to not overreact to anything because it's one game.
Hmm.
And also cards on the table. I didn't really watch any of the preseason. I was not going to stay up because I was still in England at the time. So I was like, I'm not staying up till midnight
Oh my
to
god, you
start
fake
a
fan.
preseason game.
Fake
I'm a
fan. Holy shit. You
fake
have to
fan
watch
who
every
didn't want to
game.
sleep in until 2 p.m. in
Didn't want to
September.
yeah, didn't want to stay up till like 5 a.m. just to watch our AHL players bumbling around out there in preseason. I
I
don't
don't know if
blame
I
you.
was.
I don't blame
Hey, I sorry I didn't want to stay up for the Laval Belleville games, but it
you.
just I couldn't do it. But yeah, all that to say, I'm rambling at this point already. We're what minute 11? Nice.
That's
Um,
okay. We're here for the rambling. That's what we
it's
do.
terrible. Yeah. So all that to say, the defensive system is it's fucked. Like
Hmm.
I don't know what's going on. Um, but it's just not working. They seem lost out there. So hopefully they can sort that out. I mean, DJ was already shaking it up changing the defensive pairings in the third period. It's game one, dude.
Yeah,
Like
already.
either they know the system or they don't. Teach them the system, and if that still doesn't work, then Anyway, sorry.
Hmm.
Next thing, I could just say the same thing for the next 10 minutes. Let's move along to something else.
I guess before we get back into another topic, I will just let everyone watching know that we kind of have a little bit of a format change this year where we're going to be doing sort of a Q&A segment at the end of every episode. So feel free to leave your questions in the chat and we will be looking for them towards the end of the episode. We will definitely love to go over your comments. We're just going to kind of organize it towards the end of the episode. So whatever you have on your mind, whatever it is, even if it's not necessarily relevant to what we're currently talking about, let us know in the chat and we will answer some of those questions at the end of the episode. But from there, I guess, since we were talking about Corpusalo, I feel like I have to ask you, were you a fan of the signing in the summer?
No.
Oh,
Cards
oh,
on the table, I wasn't. I mean,
spicy.
if I would have been a bigger fan of, this sounds so stupid because the Sens are in cap hell without everyone signed, obviously, without Pinto still, but on a contract for someone like Corpusalo, and obviously this would have meant that you can't sign him because maybe the main thing for him was the term on it. 5 years at $4 million a year for a goalie who hasn't put together back-to-back decent seasons, not even good,
Yep.
decent.
Yep.
Korpisalo's looked great, terrible, all right, terrible, great. It's one of the least consistent goalies. And granted, maybe a lot of that has to do with Columbus's defense over the last few years. But the thing is still he has been not at all consistent through his career. So I would have been happier with shorter term, bit more money up front. Honestly, like if it had been instead of say like a 5 year 20 million contract, if the Sens had signed him to like I don't know 2 year 12 million, even like it's not
6 million
great
average
still.
would have been crazy for him, but I
Oh,
do
for sure.
also I would also prefer the 2 year term as
There's
well.
just like the 2 year term sound, and I obviously like I know it's probably a stupid thing to even bring up because like if the dude's looking for 5 years, the guy's looking for 5 years. Like that's just the way it is. But the term is what scares me.
Mm-hmm.
If he can be even like a league average goalie, 4 million a year, especially with the cap supposedly finally going up, 4 million a year is great. If he can be even league average, ideally above league average, but if the guy can put up between a 905 and like a 910 for the next 5 years, I'm thrilled with that contract. It's just that every other year it usually starts with an eight. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
fingers crossed. I'm rooting for the guy, and I really really hope it works out. But at the time, I was not too thrilled with it. No, I don't. How did you feel?
My opinions are almost like exactly the same as yours. Like I'm really rooting for Corbusalo to be great for the Sens, just obviously as a fan and also
Yeah,
as a Columbus fan. Ever since he came up from their AHL team, I've really liked this guy. But you are so correct that he is incredibly up and down. He's had some great stretches in the regular season and some amazing playoff series, and then he has had some absolutely awful seasons. Like I think it was the season before last one, like 21-22. He was so bad that I thought he was going to kind of bomb out of the league. And then he had a bit of a resurgence last year, and suddenly his value around the whole league rose, and he got to play for the Kings in the playoffs. So obviously he does have the talent, but does he have the consistency? And that's why I agree with you about the whole term thing. When I saw that contract announced on July 1st, the term scared me right away. It's just I feel like if a goalie isn't gonna be like an elite starter who is playing like 60 games for you,
yeah,
5 year term is a little bit excessive. The cap hit will be fine with the cap going up, but
for sure.
term is definitely questionable. I pretty much agree with you.
I'm much happier with that contract if the in this like 1A 1B scenario, um, if that other goalie had a bit more of a consistent track record than Forsberg does, because
Mm-hmm.
Forsberg has
Yeah.
been phenomenal for a year and then was not super great, but also very injured the next. So
Mm-hmm.
if because that's just I think it's just one of those things where the Sens kind of have two goalies in that camp of like Are they going to be great? Are they going to be below league average? And so when you have two of those guys taking up both goaltending spots without much, because like some teams will have one of those guys and they're like, well, worst case, we'll just call someone up who's hot in the AHL. Sens don't really have that opportunity. Well, fingers crossed they don't, because last year they had 7 different goalies start a game for them because injuries were such a big problem. Um, yeah, it just kind of makes things a bit trickier. And I don't know, maybe, and I think I saw some people who would prefer to go into the season with Forsberg and then whoever the best goalie currently in the AHL is based on camp. And I mean, that's still pretty risky, but
Yeah, like I definitely think the Sens needed to go out and get a goalie this offseason.
mhm,
So I think overall I'm glad that they did. And I'm not
yeah,
like angry about the contract or anything. It's just that I'm not like totally sold just yet. We need him to have a really good season. And again, in terms of the term, like there is a possibility that this works out perfectly where I think Forsberg has 2 years left, and then, if Korpisalo is the better goalie over those next 2 years, then you let Forsberg go, and then Sogard comes up to continue the tandem then with Korpisalo. But then there is also a bad path where Forsberg heavily outplays Korpisalo, and then you have Korpisalo locked up for longer while you want to give Forsberg a raise, and then you gotta like I don't know, buy out Korpisalo or something, and then get Sogard. So that's obviously thinking too far ahead, but I don't know. It's not like it's risky. I don't know. They needed a goalie, but I don't. It's not the best.
yeah. And also when you set it up that way, when Forsberg outplays Corpusalo, you know his number has to be higher, even
Mm-hmm.
if
Mm-hmm.
he's someone that you think is probably worth about 4 per year. It's going to be higher.
Yep, and I guess while we're talking about cap hits, we might as well get to the big shadow that is lingering over this team, which is the Shane Pinto, not even contract negotiations, because I bet that they're pretty close on a contract, but it's just the fact that we have no cap room to actually sign him to a contract. So we saw the team play without our second and third centers tonight, Norris and Pinto. It wasn't great. I don't think, like, I think Greg was okay, Chartier was okay, but it's just not ideal to have those guys in those spots right now. And
Right.
I don't know. I guess how I'll frame it is what if we're not trading Joseph, like what else can we do? I feel like trading Joseph is like the only possibility, but no one's gonna want to trade him after how he played tonight and how he's been in the
No,
preseason.
no, I don't know what you do. I understand that because from what I remember, the Sens approached the Tarasenko camp, couldn't get a deal done, and then when the whatever teams Tarasenko wanted to go to more, when that couldn't happen, they like approached the Sens later and be like, actually, you know what? Maybe we'll do a little something. And then like so I understand like maybe that wasn't part of the plan after the first week of July that Tarasenko was gonna be on the team. But everyone's saying, like Tarasenko's the reason that Pinto isn't on the team right now. No. Uh this might be harsh. Pierre Dorian is the reason that Shane
Mm,
Pinto isn't on the team. It's been I mean, it's not, in his defense, it's only been like 2 months since this issue began. So, like how quickly do you want someone to free up cap space in 2 months? Like, come on, that's pretty quick. Um, no, I think it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that you can't find room in the cap to number one sign Shane Pinto, but at this point, like you got 60K in cap space running, you're down a player in game one. Like, so I honestly thought when the Sens were going to be a cap team, which was the general consensus when ownership changed, which I am glad to see is the case. I am glad to see that my favorite hockey team is spending to the cap. It's great. But with Pierre, like those last few years under Melnick, he was a master at being just above the cap floor, paying as little as possible in real dollars.
mm-hmm.
Has the guy just forgotten? Like that would have taken. That's such a detailed look at it, and it's like now that it's flipped, he just doesn't know how it works anymore.
That's really
Like
funny. I never thought of it
when
like
when
that.
you're so focused, like it just didn't translate. It just didn't translate to the cap, to the actual cap. He's been so focused on the floor. Maybe he forgot that there's a maximum. I don't know. It's just so strange that a guy who, for years has been. I mean, like a perfect example is back in the day the Zach Smith for Artem Anisimov trade. Remember that one? Because Anisimov
Mm-hmm.
made like half his cap hit. Like this is a guy who's been going out and doing that for years. So you'd think he'd be a great GM as far as, yeah, like I said, like being as close to the cap as possible and being able to manage around it. But we're at the point now where the Sens had 11 forwards and couldn't call anyone up. So it's embarrassing all around. The Pinto situation, and past that, like I said, not even being able to replace an injured player. You can't call up. I did the math. 62K. They have 8% of a league min contract in cap space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's I don't know what you do with that. It's embarrassing. It's
The,
it's it's terrible.
that was a really funny observation that Pierre is like the master of the cap floor, but the cap ceiling he hasn't figured that out yet. He's not used to it, I guess. And maybe there's some sort of difference there in the money. Maybe it's harder this way, but that was really funny. It sucks too because having to play a player short just because of like two injuries as well. Like that's not even that many. I saw that Vancouver is also running 11 forwards and 6D tonight, but they have three injuries. It was like three or four or something, so a little bit tougher for them. And everyone agreed as well, like that Yuri Schmeckel. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. He pretty much earned a spot on the team out of camp, and yet we had to send him down anyway. And I do also wonder if Roby Yarventi could have started on the team out of camp.
Yeah.
A little bit easier for him because he's waivers exempt, so you can always let him marinate in the AHL. But those are two guys who really earned spots in camp. But we're just so close to the cap ceiling that we can't even have $800,000 contracts instead of the league minimum. Like it's only a little bit more money, and we still can't fit those guys in. So it's looking like
Yeah.
it could be a little bit of a mess here.
And like nothing against Rourke Chartier as a
Mm-hmm.
dude. I think it's great that it's a great story that he made the team, that he's back after so much injury issues and everything. Um, the difference between his contract and Yarventi's is just over $120,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That amount of money should not be breaking your cap. That amount of money shouldn't
Ugh.
be an issue. It's terrible. It's just horrible mismanagement.
We really went just head first into the cap ceiling. Like it's we even at the beginning of last year, we were barely even thinking about it. We were just like all we
Yeah.
were thinking about it for was like, oh, if we re-sign DeBrincat, are we gonna have room, or how much money will we have space to actually sign him? And then we don't sign him anyway, and then it ends up we bring in some other players, and then we're capped out even worse. It's wild. Like people have been doing a lot of brainstorming on Twitter over the last couple of weeks of how we're even going to make room for Pinto at all, and I haven't seen any options that I like. Like they all kind of suck, and most of them
Yeah.
involve trading Joseph, and I don't want to do that.
That is the problem with a team right on the cap with, I'll say it, zero bad contracts.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think
It's
any of them are
weird.
bad. It's it's a tough situation. Like I don't think anyone is overpaid at the moment. Like they're all pretty fair.
Yeah. So I don't know what the issue is. That's a problem too. No one's overpaid and the team can't fit everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
and like I would understand that if this was the case for like Tampa or Carolina, even a perennial playoff team. This team can't make the playoffs. All the players are good. Nobody's overpaid. Oh shit, we don't have room for everybody. Like, what's the problem here?
Mm-hmm.
I can't, I'm too dumb to figure it out. These fucking people in charge of my favorite hockey team are in charge of my favorite hockey team. You'd think for a good reason they should be able to figure it out. And I'm sick of it. I just want to
Hell,
watch hockey and not be mad at the cap. Oh,
even Toronto, for as much as we make fun of them for the contracts and the cap hits, they at least were making the playoffs before they reached all the cap troubles. Like at least for a couple of seasons, we're not even there yet. So it's tough to
yeah.
have to worry about that already.
You know what the Leafs did?
Hmm.
They signed the players who had a good camp and they made the team.
Yeah.
They didn't send the players with a good camp down to the minors and keep the guys who are being paid less. And they've got like five guys making $20 million each. So, so just for the record, any Leafs fans who are watching this, which you're probably not because Game Over Toronto's on right now. That is an exaggeration. That's me being silly about it. But it is so stupid that the Caps have seemed to, and now as much as Sens fans, as much as we've like made fun of the Leafs for their salary structure, now it's the Sens who are in cap hell. I don't know why.
Yep,
It's so strange.
it came at us real fast, and like you mentioned that you don't think that Tarasenko is necessarily a problem in terms of the cap hit. Like you still like the addition, right? I think that he's
Yeah.
gonna have to be huge for this team though to make everyone to like win everyone over, because now everyone is thinking like, oh, we gave this guy 5 million, and if he isn't like really good right out of the gate, I think he's gonna get a lot of flack, which would be unfortunate, especially just because people's fan brains are like, oh, the last contract we signed was this veteran for 5 million, and now we can't even sign like our young goal scorer. So like Tarasenko's gonna have to step it up, eh?
Even if they re-signed DeBrincat, he'd be making about like not much more than
Yeah, like
what
2 million
Tarasenko
or
and
3 million
Kubalik are
more.
making combined.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
bring in Kubalik at 2.5 to be like a 20 plus goal scorer on the third line. That's ideal. That's perfect. Like as far
Mm-hmm.
as I guess he honestly he's probably underpaid, frankly.
I think so.
Tarasenko can play absolutely above the level of your standard $5 million player. Where's the cap problem? I can't find it. I'm so confused.
I guess the only like alternative sort of would be like if you didn't sign Tarasenko, maybe you sign like a third or fourth line depth winger for 1 to 2 million, and then you have more room for your depth and your healthy scratches. But I mean, then you're just a worse team on the ice at that point, most likely. Like if we didn't have the injury issues right now, and we still had we had the full lineup, and we had Josh Norris in there. And then we only need we like even if we still needed to have room for Pinto, but if we had Norris in there, I think people wouldn't be freaking out as much. But just the fact that we're missing both of those guys, it's
Yeah.
tough.
I don't know. And I mean, like removing these guys doesn't completely fix the thing because maybe you remove them, you have room for Pinto, but then you don't even have a full lineup because you can't bring in enough min contracts. But
Mm-hmm.
this is why you don't sign guys like Hamonic and McEwen to term before you lock
Yeah,
up the important players.
100%.
So
Three
anyway,
years on McEwen is just weird. Like I when when it was a few days into free agency, and I was like, oh, we still need some depth forwards. Like I was seeing his name out there, and I was like, oh, I've seen him be like a gritty tough guy before. I wouldn't mind signing him. And then a 3 year deal, like what? That had to be like the only way that he was gonna sign with us, right? He was probably just like, I don't want to come to Ottawa unless you give me term, like just unless you give me some job security, because otherwise, then he's bouncing around the league to different teams on 1 year deals. So I feel like that was probably a case of just like you had to give him 3 years, but also you could have just not signed him at that point too.
weird thought about how that works. His agent calls, "Hey, do you want to play in Ottawa?" No, I don't really want to go and live in Ottawa. What if you could live there for 3 years instead? Yes. Like
Yeah,
it's the
I guess so.
weird, but yeah, no, I mean, I for a guy like him, I understand the job security portion of it. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. Like he's on a one-way deal, whatever, league min. Yes, you can bury it, but I don't know. And that's the problem too, is McEwen isn't even the problem here.
Yeah, that's the thing is
Send him
we
down and
have to
call someone
nitpick
else.
everything.
You could send him down and then still have no room to bring anybody else up.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
it's yeah, it's bad. Like who's making 60K over min? Yarventi's making more than that. I think Sokolov is making more than that. Like it's just a problem. Someone needs
Yeah.
to be traded ASAP, and I don't know who that is.
Exactly. Like I keep coming back to it. I feel like it's gonna be Joseph, especially just because he's playing well, so he's probably raising
I
his
mean,
stock
if you
with
can
other
sell
teams.
high, if
Yeah,
you can sell high, I
that
guess.
seems
Which
to be the way
selling
out.
high is not attaching a second round pick to him. I guess
I guess so.
that's
Yeah. It
depressing. That's
it's
real.
gonna
That's bad.
it'll
That's
be
really
like getting a
depressing.
5th round pick or something instead of paying to move him, which sucks
Oh
because
God.
he's a good guy and we all like him, and he played great tonight. But
Yeah.
it's tough. It's tough, and
Okay, you take Joseph off the PK. Who do you replace him with?
that's the tough part as well, because we've had a lot of like Kelly and Kastelik out there on the PK, which is not
Yeah.
always the best options. So he's kind of our top PKer right now. Like Giroux
Yeah.
wins the faceoffs and then he just goes off. And Stutzla is getting good at it, but he's not necessarily the go-to guy yet. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
I would want to keep him on the
Oh
second
yeah, I
unit.
would. Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know.
Maybe Schmeckel goes in there, and once we can finally call him up, I don't know.
I mean, you move, say, okay, so say you move Joseph, that frees up 3 mil. You sign Pinto to what? Probably somewhere between two and a half.
Hmm.
You don't have room for another min call up.
Yeah. So
So
Joseph makes.
say you sign Pinto for 2.5. Now you have 500K plus the 60K you currently have in cap space.
Hmm.
It's still a nightmare. Unless you sign
Yeah.
Pinto to 2 even or even below that, you have zero roster flexibility.
So Joseph at 2.9 and then say Pinto is 2.5. It's like an extra 400K. So yeah, you couldn't call up an extra player. It would be a case of like sending someone else down. You would get just a little bit of extra money to afford like the extra amount that Schmeckel or Yarventi makes and call
Yeah.
them up, but you couldn't get an extra player.
And unfortunately, it would have to be Chartier send down because they're not going to send down McEwen after signing him to 3 years. So
Yeah.
that would be the case. But I don't know.
It's
It's just not
oh boy.
ideal across the board. The cap is the cap. As a Sens fan who has not cheered for a team that spends to the cap since 2010 ish.
Yeah, since like a few years after the cap was even the
Yeah,
thing.
I was always kind of thrilled about the lack of a soft cap. About I loved the hard cap because that way teams could never spend more than $20 million than my favorite team because I knew they would be spending a lot more than that if there
Mm-hmm.
was ever a soft cap or if the Sens ever could spend below the cap floor, they were going to. Like, make no mistake, the Sens would have been like, you would have looked like, for any baseball fans out there, you would have looked at like the payrolls and the Sens would have been like right there with like the Oakland A's. It would have been bad. Um, if you ever want to have a really fun time, look at baseball team payrolls. There are differences of $150 million
Oh
plus.
God.
Um, yeah. But now, um, as long as the team keeps spending, and also because I've gotten older and wiser, a little bit wiser, um, yeah, no, the soft cap just makes a lot more sense. And I was checking with the game over, like our group chat just to double check because I was pretty sure that in the NBA, min league contracts don't count against the cap, and that's true. And I
Oh,
love
we
that.
need
I
that.
love
Yep.
that.
That would just here's the thing, it sounds like bias just because it would help the Sens so much right now, but it would help every team. Like and there's some teams where if those contracts wouldn't count against the cap, it would give them like an extra 3 billion on the cap, right? Signing
Yeah,
another decent player. So we need that. I see no reason to not have that. It's weird that that isn't already a thing.
anyway, let's talk about something else other than the cap because I'm just going to stay riled up this
Yeah,
whole
I
episode.
what I was gonna throw to next was we haven't talked about the DeBrincat trade at all yet. That is a little bit regarding the cap, but we can probably steer the discussion in a way that's not entirely about that, right?
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Day it breaks. How do you feel?
Um, when I saw the trade return the first time, I was a little bit disappointed just because I was hoping to get like a better younger player, like maybe Jonathan Bergen or someone like that, as opposed to Donovan Sabrango is like a decent prospect, but he's not like one that you get super excited about as a fan. He's kind of like a bit more of like a long shot guy. I hope that he ends up playing for the Sens in the future. I think he's a local kid, so that would be an awesome story. But I I was a little bit disappointed at first. The main thing that I'm clinging to right now is I think that the first round pick is going to be a pretty good asset as long as Boston doesn't have an amazing season and then Detroit gives us the lower of the picks, which will be Boston, like no matter what, pretty much. Um,
Yeah, I mean there is a world where they both miss the playoffs, but the fact that the Sens couldn't even get an unconditional first is kind of rough. I
yeah,
mean, I say that outside of like top 10 protected, that I think that's just standard these days. Um, but yeah, to be like we either get your first round pick or the pick of the team that just set the record for most points in a season.
ugh, yeah.
Yeah, let's do that. I don't know. It just I don't know.
It's a weird condition too because obviously Detroit isn't going to be better than Boston. Like
There's
Boston is
no
going to
way.
have a bit of a fall off, but they're still going to be good, and Detroit is probably going to be like pretty close to the Sens in the standings. So it's not I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a weird condition that they wouldn't like. Obviously, Detroit doesn't want to give up their own first, but I feel like then the Boston first, there's a huge difference there. So the condition, it kind of sucks.
Yeah, and I think it's I can't remember what the condition on it is if so I think it's also protected. I think Boston's first is top 10 protected from when they sent it to Detroit. So
Yeah, the
if
original
both
trade.
teams completely fall off, Detroit can be like, we're going to give you Boston's pick. Uh-oh, it's top 10 protected. So then it's then move to 2025, I think is the way that that would work.
Something like that. There's a possibility where it goes to next
Yeah.
year.
I probably should
Either
have just pulled up
Boston's
Cap
or
Friendly to look, but
yeah.
off the top of my head, I think that's more or less what it is. Either
Mm-hmm.
way, the Sens for yeah. So anyway, the first round pick going to the Sens from the DeBrincat trade is probably going to be somewhere around 20 to 25, realistically.
Yeah.
Um, which isn't great when you gave up seventh overall a year before this trade was made. Anyway.
That's even if the pick doesn't end up being too high, I'm just glad that we have two firsts for this year, and I hope that we don't end up trading either of them, even if we're in the playoff race.
Oh
Because
my god, yeah,
holy crap, do we need to restock the cupboards? Especially, we might get into this a little bit later, but some of the players who were waived by the Sens this season just kind of shows how we need to keep more first round picks and actually hit on them for once.
yeah. I don't remember the exact stat, and I don't remember who tweeted this, so sorry to whoever tweeted it, but I think it was something like between 2016 and 2019, the Sens had, I want to say it was 9 or 10 first and second round picks, and Brady Kachuk's the only one
Oh
that is on the
God,
team.
I didn't realize it was that many picks too. Like,
I mean, you look back on it, right? So 2016, Logan Brown.
dust,
Um,
trash.
2017 was 2017 Lassie? No, 2017
He was 19.
was 2017 was Shane Bowers.
Oh,
Who
he
I
was also on waivers for probably like the
yeah,
fourth time in
bad.
his
So
career.
so bad trading him out in the Duchesne trade. It didn't really lose out on much there.
Yeah,
2019 was Lassie Thompson, I think.
yeah, that's right.
So 2018 was JBD.
20 was Kachuk 2018 draft? Was that right?
Kachuk was 2018, but did they have a
They
second
were both.
pick in
Yeah, they were in the
2018?
same year. They were in the same year. Yeah.
Yeah, so JBD, right? As
Mm-hmm.
far as like the late ones who aren't on the team. And then yeah, I mean second round picks, I don't remember them all. Johnny Tychonic, I already forget how to pronounce his name. He was a second round pick in 2018 or 19 as well. Anyway, so all that to say, Kachuk's the only one currently on the team from those draft years.
Mm-hmm.
Could you okay, so I had this conversation the other day, and I'm kind of all over the place here, but we're talking about the draft. Um
Go for it.
on a redraft in 2020, the Sens probably have the top two picks. That's
Mm-hmm.
awesome. Had the Sens somehow squeaked out first and second overall in 2020, there is no doubt in anyone's mind they were going Lafreniere, Byfield, right?
Um. Probably. I think they were extremely high on Stützle and Sanderson, so
Right.
I'm tempted to say that they would have just taken one of them, but I feel like
Maybe
because
Lafreniere, Stützle then.
but the thing is, I feel like unless they because Stützle was drafted as a winger, right? And then you're not gonna draft
Yeah.
Lafreniere and Stützle both as left wings. So unless they fully expected Stützle to become a full-time center, which I don't really think they did, considering they weren't even gonna do it at all until Norris had the injury troubles. Um,
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think they probably would have done Lafreniere Byfield, and that would have been bad.
Yeah. So I mean Byfield still has some time. Moving him to the wing on the top line in LA, I think is gonna be great for him.
He'll be good, but it's taking
But it's
longer.
just so all that to say, yes, the Sens have a track record of scouting some gems in late rounds, and that's fun. I like that. It's a blast when that happens. Hasn't happened in a while, but I would much prefer a team that can hit their first and second round picks
Mm-hmm.
consistently, which they can't and have not for a long time.
Yeah,
Whenever
because
the
you
Sens pick 15th or later, it's
it's
it's I
usually a
mean
mess.
it's usually pretty bad. And not to say that every draft pick drafted between 15 and 32nd is a guaranteed for sure everyday NHL player. I know that's not how it works, but this is a team with a track record of very, very poor drafting early on outside of top 5 picks.
And earlier we were talking about being capped out, and when you're this close to the cap, you need like a steady stream of your first and your second round picks actually developing and being able to step into the bottom of the lineup and be everyday NHL players. And we have seen that some of our recent picks can't do that now, like 3-4 years after being drafted, to the point where they have to get waived, which is just really disappointing. So as I was saying about the DeBrincat trade, I think that's the main thing I'm happy about, is just that we have a second first round pick, even if
Oh
it's
yeah,
not going to
this
be good.
this started with a DeBrincat trade, huh?
It
Oh
did. I
man.
mean, we can
Whoops.
go wherever we want, but it kind of ties in
Holy
with,
shit.
because those first round picks, like, and we'll have a new scouting staff too, or at least a new head of scouting, right? Because the Mann brothers are both gone.
Yeah.
So there is a little bit of optimism that maybe if we keep both of those two first round picks, we can get some good young talent again this year. But it's been hit and miss for the Sens, so we can't say for sure.
Yeah, and even the ones that you have in the minors that you want to call up, Yarventi or Sokolov or whoever, you don't have the cap space for it. So the
Mm-hmm.
very few instances where, okay, ELC contract and showing promise, oh shit, you're stuck in Belleville. Sorry. Um, Bad
That's
situation.
that's the thing though. If we had more good young guys coming up, like, you don't have to sign someone like McEwen. You don't have to play certain guys who stick around in the bottom six for a few years, which we've seen a lot on this team. Like, whether or not they really improve or deserve to keep the spot or anything, you need guys to be pushing them and just developing as young players to be able to just say, okay, this young guy is better now, so this other guy who's been in our bottom six for a while has to go on waivers, and we're just going to replace him.
Yeah.
But we're not in that situation. We have these guys that mostly aren't good enough to make the team, especially on defense. Like, I guess everyone knows what we're talking about. I don't need to specifically call out Bernard Docker and Thompson, but it's mostly them that I'm talking about, especially like with the Hamannik contract. I think Dorion kind of knew that neither of those guys were going to beat out Hamannik in camp, so he was just like, yeah, we better make sure that Hamannik is still in camp, because he didn't want to run either of those guys as his number 6D. And especially for Bernard Docker, 5 years after his draft, that's not good.
No. At that point you kind of know that you don't really have anything there. Um, I don't know. I think just watching Thompson get absolutely caved in for his 3 or 4 games he played with the Sens last year. At
Mm-hmm.
that point, I was like, okay, I'm a little lukewarm on him. JBD, I still have some hope for.
Yeah.
Just because when someone is advertised as mostly like a stay at home kind of guy, I feel like you can kind of give that player a little bit more time to develop. Um, and I don't know, because every so often you're like, oh, let me look at the top 10 stat wise, like stay at home guys this season. If you're looking at like advanced stats, and there's usually one who just happened to be like, oh shit, I'm good now at 26. Like stay at home defensemen develop kind of weirdly, I think, compared
Yeah.
to the more offensive minded guys. So I want to have some faith in him, but like, yeah, like if you're like shit or get off the pot, like
Mm-hmm.
let's get going here.
He reminds me of Dylan DeMello in that he's a defensive D who isn't super big, but he somehow, like, Dylan DeMello was somehow able to get it done, and JBD just isn't. It's like, you're a defensive guy, but you don't really get by on your size, so you have to be really smart, right? And it's just not quite there. Like, it makes me wish we had Dylan DeMello instead of Hamannik. It wouldn't fit
Oh,
under the cap at all, but I miss that guy.
I wasn't thrilled by any means when they traded DeMello, but I wasn't that upset because it was just at a point of like just ship everything out for every pick you can possibly get your
Yeah.
hands
Mm-hmm.
on. I think they was traded for a third.
Something like that, third or fourth.
Yeah, no, that was stupid. He would fit so well on this team right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's a shame.
Well, hopefully we have enough to get by on defense anyway. I feel like most of it, this is the thing. I feel like on paper, our defense, everyone was very content with it going into the season. I feel like it's just more of a matter of the defensive systems, as we were saying at the beginning of the episode. It just looks like a complete mess out there, like, regardless of the personnel. You bring in Chikrin, who's an awesome defenseman, and he's great, but he can't single handedly save everything about how the team
No,
plays. So
no.
It's gonna be interesting to see if DJ can actually get these guys to play some proper defense.
On the subject of defense and going back to cap issues,
Oh yeah.
just something I want to bring up because no one wants to trade Joseph anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Is DJ going out of his way to make Brandstrom the guy? He
He
barely
only
played over 10
played,
minutes.
yeah, 10 minutes. That's a good point. Uh,
Listen, I don't understand DJ not liking Brandstrom as a player.
mm-hmm.
I really like Brandstrom, and I think you put him somewhere where he gets minutes, he's gonna finally break out. Maybe not be like a top four kind of guy on most teams, but I think he's good. I think he's a good player. I can't imagine if DJ has the ability to, I don't know, because Brandstrom's playing like 10 minutes and Joseph has been playing second line a lot the last
Mm-hmm.
few games.
Yeah, it's kind of
That's where he slotted
showcasing
in at
him.
practice. I honestly think this is DJ being like, look how good Joseph is, and Brandstrom is expendable. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily think that either one of them is especially expendable with the team that whose roster is so thin right now with these injuries. And suddenly you have Ridley Gregg on the second line and Rourke Chartier on the third line. Like it's I don't think that's the case at all. But maybe maybe this looks a bit silly being like DJ Smith wants them to trade Brandstrom. That's why Joseph's on the second line.
Oh my
But
god.
it kind of looks like it. It kind of looks like that's the case.
You might be right,
Uh,
especially since like in at least half of the preseason games, Branstrom was basically the number one D. Like in all of the games where Shabbat, Chikrin, Sanderson, they weren't playing. There was at least like 4 games like that where it was just Branstrom and Hamonic as the top
yeah.
pairing. So they're kind of showcasing him like that in the preseason, and then you see right away tonight in the first game, dude only gets 10 minutes of ice time. So I don't think the coach is the biggest fan right out the gate. Like, even though he played pretty well last season, he's definitely a possibility to move. It's just that he makes 900K less than Joseph. So then it becomes, you really got to get Pinto signed to a cheap contract then if it becomes Branstrom that you're moving.
Yeah, but then what do you do? Because you trade Brandstrom and all of a sudden you have 5D on the roster.
Oh, that's a good point too, is because you have to call up Clevin to be the left-handed D for the third pairing, and then you're only saving like 1 million because he's
Yeah.
900K.
You trade
Yeah.
Brandstrom, you call up Clevin, all of a sudden you have one right-handed guy on the team.
Mm-hmm.
Because I already got Shabbat Chikrin, both lefties on the first pair. So then you got Zub and Brandstrom as the two actual right-handed defensemen. And I'm not really
Hold on, hold
someone
on,
who
hold on, hold
completely
on.
buys into left
Hold
to right.
on. Branstrom's left-handed.
Oh, is he left-handed? Who am I thinking
Yes,
of?
it's Zub and Hamonic are the right hands.
I don't know why I thought Hamonic was left.
Yeah, what the hell? It's reverse.
I was so sure. Anyway,
But anyway, yeah, Clevin basically has to be the guy if Branstrom goes because it's either Clevin or like what Jacob Larson or Dylan Hetherington, which is that's not the
not
move at
ideal.
all.
No, and like, oh, that makes me so mad because I loved whenever we got a glimpse of Brandstrom Clevin.
Yeah, that was
Oh,
good.
looked
That was
so
good.
good.
If you could
Looked so
just
good.
remove Hamonic,
And anyone who's watched Game Over last season knows I have like this weird thing where I can't stand Travis Hamonic. And I don't want it to sound like I'm saying all of this because I'm not a fan of Hamonic. I'm saying this because I am a fan of Brandstrom. That I
yeah.
really, really want. I really wanted it to be Brandstrom Clevin as the third pair for the next few years. Like I honestly think that'd be a great, great third pair. But I have no idea.
You can't really blame Travis Hamonic too much for like the team's defensive problems,
Oh no, absolutely not.
but Sanderson had to carry Hamonic all year last year, and he did great. But it would have been better if he played with Zub all year. And then now Branstrom has to kind of carry Hamonic on his ice time too. So hopefully Hamonic is much better in a reduced role. It wasn't great tonight, but it could be better because he did have good games last year. It wasn't all bad, so hopefully he can bounce back.
And I will say also, as someone who watched, I would say 70 games last season. Like
Hmm.
obviously there are people who are going to watch every single game. I don't want that to be like I watched almost all of them, but like as someone who watches a lot of the Sens tonight, was probably a bottom five Jake Sanderson game in his career, to be honest. And which is a
Yeah.
bummer because the dude's playing with Zub, right? And I thought immediately, oh my God, it's gonna be so good. Sanderson's gonna have so much more freedom to move around. And not worry about being anchored down. But no, like just as a peace offering to the Hamnick Hive. Um, even with Zub, Sanderson had one of his worst games, I think. So not to say that Sanderson would have scored 50 points last season if not for Hamnick. That's obviously not true, but like just wanted to point out that yeah, Hamnick sucks and Sanderson did not play great, and it wasn't because of Hamnick this time. So
Yep, he will have to own it this time. Um, I think from there, do you want to get into a little bit of Q&A from the chat?
yeah, absolutely.
I think the first comment that I want to mention is Arham Productions. I think this was when we were talking about Corpusalo and I was talking about future goalie situation. He said we've learned that buyouts can burn you, because I think I was talking about like, oh, if Corpusalo isn't like clearly the starter, he may end up being a
Mm,
buyout. And this is something that we kind of missed in terms of talking about the cap situation. Is why are we capped out with no bad contracts? Is three buyouts on the books and also the Matt Murray retained salary, which if we couldn't trade him, he would have also been a buyout probably. That was a very good point there because we are short $5 million just because of those guys, those four contracts that we're still holding money on.
yeah, and I suppose that $5 million would kind of set everything up. Pay Pinto is 2.5, whatever he wants is 2.5 or something along those lines. And you still have 2.5 to move guys up and down. So I guess to an extent, yeah, that 5 million is playing a huge part of everything, but also that was on the books. Pierre knew
Yeah,
that was
it's
there.
been there for a while on the books.
Um, so yeah, starting next season, that 1.5 on Murray's done. The 1.8 on Bobby Ryan's done. The 750K on Michael Del Zotto's done. The team's actually saving cap on Colin
Yeah,
White before
cap
being
credit there.
yeah, then
That's
3 years
weird.
following that of 875. I don't know how that works. I'm not going to pretend to know how that works.
Yeah,
That's strange.
too much for me.
But so about five, that goes from five on the cap to having a yeah, $625,000 credit. So then like 5.5 comes off next year plus whatever you're um adding in cap space, which unfortunately might just be Jake Sanderson at
Yeah,
that
it
point. It
it
might
might
just
be.
be covering Jake Sanderson's contract. So the Sens might be in a bit of a crunch again next year, depending on how things go. Because like, what are the bad contracts expiring this year? There
Thing
aren't
is,
any.
I think you're right that there's no bad contracts. I think Tarasenko, even if he does well, is probably only going to be a 1 year deal because if he does
Yeah,
well, we're not going to give him a raise. We're not going to have
I don't know how
room.
you
And
sign
then if
him.
he does poorly, he's gone anyway. So that's basically then 10 million from there. Uh, some of that goes to Sanderson, and then we will find a way to get Pinto in somehow. From there, I
Yeah,
would be pretty positive because once Pinto is signed, then we have the whole forward core pretty much ready to go, and the whole D core is locked up at least. Chikrin with 1 more year. That's the only thing that's not really, but um,
yeah,
it will look pretty good for at least a couple years then. After that dead money comes off the books.
yeah. But then who do you put on the second line wing? Because the problem is that I think
Hmm.
Tarasenko's a perfect like he complements the top six so well, even if he is
Mm-hmm.
technically on the third line right now,
Yeah.
whatever. Um, then I don't know what you do. Do you try and re-up Kubalik at like a small raise if he scores 20-25 goals and then just stick him on the second line? I still think he's
Potentially.
a perfect third liner. I don't like
Yeah.
him on the second line. Um, I don't know. You just gotta pray for some great ELC contracts coming up next year, I think.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. Like I was talking about earlier, this is where you need the young guys coming up. Like Yarventi had an amazing preseason, so hopefully he can build off of that, and maybe we can slide him into second line left wing or something next season. Like we
Yeah.
need those young guys coming up. So I hope that we keep those two first round picks and make good on them this summer. Um, from there, I gotta read through the chat a little bit more. It was there any more thoughts you had on that?
No, I just think God, I don't know. It's just I'll also go back to what I said before. Pierre knew what the cap was.
Mm-hmm.
He knew what the payroll was, and he didn't have a plan. It's been 2 months since the cap has been right where this you signed Tarasenko. You have over 2 months till the season starts, and you do nothing.
Yeah. It's like he had all that time to do
And I know
something.
we're singing Matthew Joseph's like we're singing his praises right now. He's so good. He's doing great. Yes, he is. I would still prefer Pinto on the team at
Oh,
the end of the
definitely.
day.
Definitely. That's for sure. For
So
sure.
you didn't move him. You didn't move Brandstrom. He had 2 months, dude. Like,
Mm-hmm.
just I don't know. It's embarrassing. Honestly, he should be embarrassed. Unless there's some weird.
Damn.
I can't
Harsh.
even imagine what this scenario would be if there's something going on behind the scenes that would make us go, okay, no, I get it now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that could possibly
It
be.
kind of just it seems like it is what it is, right? It seems like there isn't
Yeah.
really any information that we don't have that would change things. Like I would be surprised. I couldn't think of what that could possibly be.
I have no idea. Unless it just turns out Pinto's been sitting there demanding 5 million or something. Like there's no way, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's the only thing I could think of. But from all the reports, it sounds like I mean, I don't want to put words into anyone's mouth, but it sounds like they aren't off on contract, right? So I imagine they've probably agreed on a number
Probably.
and they just can't do it.
Mm-hmm. I think so too.
And like I understand if Pierre doesn't want to attach a second to Joseph. We were just talking about how poor the early on drafting has been for the Sens and how they just haven't had those picks for years now. They need to hold on to these picks. So I understand like Dorian like not wanting to attach a pick to someone who is also playing really, really well right now, just to
Mm-hmm.
offload him to sign Pinto. But like he gotta do something. You
From
gotta do
there,
something.
there was also a bit of discussion in the chat about LTIR referring to Norris. So Peter Gaudette and Rusty Carr, they were talking about that a little bit in the chat about like this is the
Mhm.
thing is if Norris was just gonna be out for another month. Like it seems like he's day to day, right? It seems like he could play
Yeah.
in the next week or two, but if he wasn't going to, you just put him on LTIR, you stash him, and then you get Pinto in at whatever number you want, right? And then you have another extra month or so at least to get things
Yeah.
worked out. But it doesn't seem like that's gonna happen,
I mean, we're in full speculation mode and I'm just tossing shit out there, so let's just keep it going.
eh?
What's worse? What's worse do you think? Still not being able to sign Shane Pinto or how much flack you would get on Twitter if Norris went straight to LTIR?
Ooh.
I think the team might be I don't want to say like overly hopeful. Like if the medical team, if it's still because from everything I've seen, because Norris is practicing, doing everything right. If it is just the medical team being like he's not quite there yet, like he can live his everyday life. It isn't like an actually like like debilitating injury to the point where like he can't do like remember when we found out that Nicholas Backstrom had to have someone tie his shoes for him for like 3 seasons
Oh
because his
God.
back was so fucked. I mean, I might be over exaggerating. It may have been just been one season where his back was really bad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like if we're at the point now where Norris his shoulder it isn't like an issue of him like it's like if it is just the doctors being like he's so close, but he's just we can't clear him to play, then I get it. But if the doctor's like he's probably going to miss like 3 weeks, at that point, just I would, I mean, personally, I would just stick him on LTIR, eat that extra week that you're gonna have to keep him there,
Mm-hmm.
sign Pinto, figure it out.
Yeah,
But
me too.
also, if they haven't figured it out in 2 months, do they really think they're gonna figure it out a month from now?
Yeah, you that's the thing is you have to have a plan. If they haven't done anything already, it's like I guess you need another month to figure it out.
What is there
Like
to do? Yeah,
yeah,
like,
they should know what the
but
plan
no,
is already, but I don't know
no.
if they do.
I want to believe it. I want to believe that he's not on LTIR because he's not going to miss 10 games. I
Mm-hmm.
really, really want to believe that by game 6 or game 7, he's in the lineup. Because if he's not, we as a fan base are going to be rightfully pissed that he wasn't put on LTIR and then they signed Pinto. Signed Pinto. That's the thing. You put his 8 million on there, you signed Pinto, and then you still have so much space to move guys up and down. it would make the first 10 games of the season so much easier not have Norris, but to have that cap flexibility. If Norris isn't playing anyway, you might as well take advantage of the fact that you can then actually move guys and not play with 11 forwards for who knows how long.
Mm-hmm. Especially when we need to have a hot start to the season, because our starts under DJ Smith have been horrible. Even when we didn't expect the team to be good, it's like we can't even be decent for a couple months and keep people like interested. It's like we're always just trash after the first month or two. Not being able to ice your best lineup is just a failure. Like
Yeah.
if they can't start stringing together wins here, it's gonna be a mess.
I I cannot handle another season being over in November. I can't.
Me too. Me too. They need to actually like keep us invested for once. Like, oh my god,
Yeah.
I'm scared.
And like
I'm
and like
scared.
we're watching the Sens as a job right now, and I love that. But the second that if the Sens are depressing to the point where I still don't want to watch and I'm getting paid for it still, that's a
Yeah. Oh
new level
god.
of upset. I
Mhm.
never even hit that point at the start of the rebuild or through like the really really rough patches of that.
Mhm.
And that's just the downside of expectations, right?
Exactly. I was still watching every game in the worst of the rebuild, unless
Oh
I
yeah.
remember there was like one game this one season in New Jersey. I think it was like 2019 or something. They went down 5-0 in the first. I had my limits, right? So I shut that
Yeah.
shit off. But other than that, I at least started watching every game during the rebuild as long as I wasn't like working or whatever.
Yeah.
So but it's getting to the point where it's like, "Oh my god, please actually win some games so we can keep this interesting."
Like I'll still take this over the Derek Stepan era.
Oh,
Um,
definitely. Definitely.
but like it's a low bar we're trying to cross here. We're trying
Mhm.
we're trying to I just want an enjoyable season.
And I hope people don't think we're being too negative either. I would try to reframe it as like nervous excitement because we're so excited for the season to be back and
Oh
we
yeah,
think
yeah.
we think the Sens should be good, but we don't know if they
Yeah.
will be. It's the scary part. It's we can't have another wasted season with this core.
On that subject, actually, let me ask you really quick before we keep going to the chat and taking any more questions that we find. Did you do preseason predictions for the standings?
Yes, on my other podcast, Extra Attackers, check them out on YouTube and Twitter. We did do that. So, do you have a specific question about how those predictions went?
Yeah. Specifically, because the guys on the SDP all
Oh yeah.
had the consensus of the Sens being sixth in the division. Where did you have Ottawa?
Okay, here's the thing. I feel like I cringed when I saw all of them having the Sens at sixth in the division, but also if you're not a Sens fan, I kind of just like understand the perspective of like, oh yeah, they're not gonna put it together yet because they never do, right? Like the last
Yeah,
3 seasons has been like, oh, they're gonna finally be good, and then they haven't been. So I
yeah.
get it. For my preseason predictions, I think I had the Sens fourth in the Atlantic. Um, it was either fourth or fifth, but I had them as a playoff team. I think I like it was either I had like 4 Metro, 4 Atlantic in the playoffs, or 5 Atlantic and 3 Metro, and I had the Sens like in the last wild card basically,
I'm pretty much right there with you. I had them
and
in
that's
fourth.
the optimistic side, pretty
Yeah, I
much.
had the Sens in fourth, being the number one wild card. I had five
hmm
Atlantic teams and three Metro teams.
I
So
think I did it that way too with 5 and 3 as well. I can't remember, but um, I think I had like Boston and Ottawa as the 2 wild cards. I think I want to say that's what it was. Maybe Boston, but maybe Boston was third in the division. I don't know. I can't remember for sure, but I did have them in wild card.
my hottest take was I had Boston in sixth.
Okay. Oh my god. Like
One injury, they're toast. That was my thinking.
it has to be Pasternak though. If it's anyone else getting injured, they might be able to survive. But if it's Pasternak,
Yeah, and
definitely
if it's
they're out.
Pasternak, then two of my fantasy teams are toast as
Yeah, then
well.
you're
So
fucked.
yeah, but yeah, I
Oh
just wanted to know. I just wanted to know where you had Ottawa, like as far as our because it just on the subject of expectations.
yeah, to kind of set the tone for the season
Yeah,
here, we do
because
expect a playoff
it's
team.
yeah, and yeah, just to reiterate, just like everyone watching, just like Mod said that. So just like Mod said, we are being very negative right now, but it's because this is the first season and I don't know how long where we're coming into it with not just like playoffs would be cool. It's playoffs or bust.
Yeah, last season it was like almost playoffs or bust, but we got kind of
Yeah.
close, and then everyone was mostly happy. And
Yeah.
we didn't even get that close, really. We were close for like 1 week. But now you are correct that it's playoffs or bust for sure.
Yeah. So we're going to be extra nitpicky this season, I think. It's going
Yep.
to be a lot of not to say that there won't be a lot of things to be excited about and a lot of positives to talk about. There better be. Um, but this season, it just feels like it's going to be easier to start picking at the negatives.
And I guess for a little bit more of the chat activity, just to throw it back to tonight's game a little bit, Newbie Sports mentioned how about that bear hug on Branstrom, and I'm
Oh my
glad that they
God.
mentioned this because that pissed me off so much hearing
I
the
can't believe he
Sportsnet
didn't get a
commentators.
penalty.
But okay, hearing the Sportsnet commentators say that Branstrom should have gotten the penalty on that play. Did
Yeah,
you
no,
did you hear
that's what
that?
I'm saying. I can't
What?
believe
What the fuck was
Branstrom
that?
had the fucking audacity to fall down.
Yeah,
That dude should have he Branstrom should have been in the penalty box. He fell down.
Branstrom got manhandled, and he should be in the box for that because he's not enough of a man. Like what the hell was that? Like I don't know. Was he
I
trying to
don't know
say
what
that it
that.
was interference on Branstrom because it wasn't? He was just turning around. He was just pivoting, and then he
Nah,
gets
dude
basically
got pulled down.
headlocked. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Seth Jarvis just fucking put his arms around him and yanked him to the ground.
Mm-hmm. That
I
was
don't know.
an example of the refs still being in preseason form. And also
Yeah.
on that topic, I have to say the penalty shot call was another example
Oh,
of
that was
that
so
too.
stupid.
Because holy crap, they called it hooking as well, but that was nothing but a tiny slash. Definitely not a hook.
Yeah.
If you're gonna call that, call it a slash. So even then, they got the call wrong, and it was soft as hell. So bad refing. And then they called a bunch of like other soft stick infractions too throughout the night.
Yeah,
It was
The Sens got a
yeah.
power play when the Hurricanes were called for holding, and it definitely was not holding. I don't remember what the call was exactly, but I just remember watching. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"That's not It's a
That
penalty,
one
but
was
it's not
weird.
holding."
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, so hockey is back, which means that yelling at the refs is back. That's a classic tradition. That's we love to do it. It's funny with hockey where that element just kind of never goes away. It's just a constant of the refs suck. I mean, it just never changes. But it's a fast sport. It's hard to call everything correctly, but it's fun to get riled up about it sometimes.
yeah. Just wish it wasn't game one.
Mm-hmm. Then I think we'll do one more chat comment before we sign off. Adam Firebear was saying, "Is it time to panic about DJ?" Now, I wouldn't say after one game, but I would say going into this season, even before this one game, he has been on the hot seat and he will remain on the hot seat until the Sens have completed November and are not below 500, right?
What is your cutoff?
Oh, so I'm trying to remember how many games it is before we go to Sweden. Do you remember the
13.
number?
I want to
13?
say 13. Let me double check that real quick, but I think it's 13.
Yeah, because that's really the mark that we need to be judging by. Because if the team
Yeah.
goes into Sweden with a bad record, then I don't want to see DJ go to Sweden like at all,
Could you
right?
imagine going to Sweden with and that being like the interim head coach's first game?
Oh God, what a mess!
Is
What a
that
mess
worse?
that
I
would
don't
be.
know.
We need to avoid that possibility. So yeah, was it 13 games?
13. Yeah.
Yeah, so out of 13 games, like the worst that I would probably be able to be optimistic about would be 7-6. Especially if a couple of those losses are overtime losses, say
Yeah,
like
like 7-4-2,
yeah,
something like that.
exactly, or like 7-3-3 or something like that. Do you
Yeah.
remember when we got Matt Duchene and we were going, was it also to Sweden? I think that was also in Sweden,
Yeah.
and the team had a technically positive record at that time, but it was like 8-5-5 or something like that, something stupid.
The
Where we had all
Sens
those OT
were
losses.
at that point. Yeah, no, I think the record was a little bit better than that. I think it was maybe what like a four, like a 6-3-3 or something. Like it was like,
I remember
on
it
paper it
was a
looked all
lot
right.
of overtime losses.
I remember, yeah. So like they were doing okay, and I want to say they had like by far the worst like advanced metrics in the league. Like
Yeah.
The Sens were like on a playoff pace while just getting absolutely caved in. And I think it was just Anderson standing on his head for a few
Mm-hmm.
games. I want to say, um,
Exactly.
like just completely getting outchanced. Like the deservo meter was like this fucking far on the other
Yeah.
team.
They
Um,
were they were just treading water at that point basically, and
yeah.
everyone was saying that it was going to come crashing down. So I'll put it this way, if our record isn't at least better than that type of scenario, then it's a disaster.
Let me pull it up actually real quick.
Yeah, gonna find the exact record before the previous Sweden
Because
trip,
I
before
think
the
we need to have this on
disaster.
record, right? Like I think we
Yeah.
need to be like, this is what the Sens were last time they went to Sweden
Mhm.
and completely fell off.
I think it might be
Let's see.
more games last time, like more games
Yeah,
before Sweden. For some reason, I seem to remember the numbers 8, 5, and 5 in my head. It would be insane
maybe
if
you're
that's
right.
correct. It would be insane if that's correct. I'm actually curious to know now
Let's see here.
if I remembered that
Um,
accurately.
um, the first what? The
What's
first
happened?
three games went to a shootout that season.
All of them. I remember the dude. I know it was a bunch of overtime losses. Wait, I want to see this now
They
too.
so they lost the first two games of the season in a shootout to the Caps and the Wings, and they won in the shootout against the Canucks. So it goes what 2-0-3, 2-1-3, 2-1-4, 3-1-4, 3-1-5, 5-1-5, 5-1-6, 5-2-6,
I think my number is
six
very close from what I'm
two and
seeing.
six, 6-3-6, 7-8-3-6, 7-4-6, 7-4-7. Oh, no, I passed it. Never mind. Hold on. That's my bad. Why am I doing that? I can just highlight it. 6-3-5.
Yeah, 6, 3, and 5.
6-3-5. The Sens went into Sweden winning
Oh yeah,
three.
you're right.
They went into Sweden winning six of their 14 games.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
It's so that's the bare minimum, right? Like it has to be
so
better than
6 out of
that.
14 didn't work. So we need 7 out of 13, and then we're in the clear.
Then we're good. Then DJ is fine. Then he's safe.
God. Oh my God, that's terrible.
Oh, some of these games, I'm looking at these scores and remembering some of these games and just cringing. Like, oh God, just remembering what happened. Like 8-3 loss to Montreal. Holy shit. Don't want to remember those ones. Oh my God. And going into Vegas and for the first time and just getting shit kicked in their
Oh yeah.
inaugural season.
That's brutal. But yeah, so yeah, I think I'm with you on that. I think bare minimum, you better win 7 out of 13 games. But if the Sens only win 7 of the first 13 games, I am on like next loss, you kick his ass out.
Yeah, it's red alert at that point, right?
I mean, then you can't. I mean, you can't. It's 2 games in Sweden. He's gonna if DJ's the coach going into Sweden, he's still gonna be the coach heading home. Like you're not gonna be like you're fired. Get your own flight back to fucking Ottawa.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
Ideally it's 8, but no, I think you're right. Bare minimum is 7. If the Sens get to that point where you can't even win 7 games before you go, like if the Sens are like 2-4, you gotta like. I'm sorry, DJ, you gotta do it. You have to replace him.
Yeah, we can't fuck around and waste time this season. We
No.
have to get going. We have to actually just not fall behind the pace of everyone else because there's always that American Thanksgiving rule that
Right.
usually if you're out of it before or at American Thanksgiving, you're not gonna get in. It's pretty unlikely. So we have to at least be close. Like, God, there's gonna be an interesting season, man. I don't know. I don't know what to expect. It was a roller coaster of a game today, and some good things, some bad things. I'm still excited for the home opener because we're playing a much worse team, so hopefully that will be an easier chance at getting a win.
Yeah, and it's not exactly the easiest schedule in those first 13 games.
A lot
Flyers
of
should
home
be able
games
to
though.
win. Yeah, but then I mean the Caps you should be able to win, but you got to play the Lightning. Red Wings I could see going either way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Red Wings should be worse than Ottawa this year, but then it's the Sabres. Islanders probably a playoff team. Penguins, that could go either way. Oh my God.
Yep.
The Penguins could like win the division. Probably not win the actually I'll take that back. They can't win the division, but Penguins could easily be like the third in the division or like dead last. Like a couple of injuries and it's over. Kings are good. Lightning again. Leafs, Canucks and Flames. Like those first 13 games, it's possible three are against non-playoff teams.
Yeah, it's a lot of teams that are definitely going to be in, and a lot of teams that are going to be in the mix for sure too. So, not a lot of bottom feeders. It's really just Philly, eh?
Yeah. On the flip side of that, at least you aren't playing a bunch of like terrible teams and then suddenly are feeling so confident after that. Like, like
Mm-hmm.
going into that Sweden trip, I think because of the quality of teams that Ottawa's playing, we're going to have a better idea of what the team actually is, which
Yeah,
is nice. But I
that's the
also
thing.
don't know if that means that the rest of the schedule is going to be easier at all. Probably not. But
They got to be good right away. There's
yeah,
lots of solid opponents coming up, so it's going to be real interesting. We're either going to be having a lot of fun in the next couple of weeks on this show celebrating wins, or it's
oh,
going to be a lot of ranting. It really could go either way, but I think that's where we're going to leave it here tonight. Anything else you had on your mind, Charlie?
I just I okay. So we're going to reiterate.
Yeah.
We're excited. We have high hopes for this team. And because of those high hopes, we're going to be extra picky about things. We are maybe going to highlight negatives more than we did last season. And oh my God, I did, but also did not miss having expectations for the Sens.
Yep, it's last year was like the little taste of having expectations, but they got dashed really quickly. So now I'm
Yeah.
just scared that that's gonna happen again. And like just at bare minimum to make me happy, just be in the wild card race the whole year. Even if you end up like losing it at the end and we miss by like 2 points or something, just keep my heart in it the whole way, you know? Because last year we were
Yeah.
like scraping for reasons to be like, oh well, if they win 5 out of the last 7 games, they could still make it. Like we don't want to be doing that again this year, so it's gonna be interesting.
I am excited. For the record, we're both
Yes, we
excited.
are excited. Put
We are
your
excited.
happy face on,
Hockey's
Charlie.
back. Game
Yes.
Over is back. Season 2 of Game Over Ottawa. It's all good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, God, we were pretty negative for nearly an hour and 20 minutes to
It's
start the season.
it's just because there's so many questions. I think it's less negativity and it's just a lot of interesting discussion on
Oh yeah, yeah,
how is this going to play out. We really don't know. It's not just like a
yeah,
slam dunk, oh this team is definitely going to be in the playoffs. It could go either way. So
yeah. And I think it's
it's
important to note that like
mhm.
this wouldn't have been a very different if the Sens had won 3-0 tonight. This episode would have been more or less the same.
Yeah, I think so.
So I don't want people to think we're overreacting to one game. I don't like that's not the case. The Sens basically got shit kicked by like the Stanley Cup favorites. It's the way it is.
Hmm.
Um, I wouldn't have been like shocked if the Sens won. I would have been happily surprised. So like, you know. Anyway, we're not being overly negative. It's all about expectations.
Yeah, I think it's good to have expectations at this point because
Yeah,
we have to have some standards with all of the Sens hockey we've watched and sat through in the last like 6 years. We have to have expectations at some point. So it was a fun game tonight. It was a complete roller coaster ride. The last 15 minutes or so were not fun. It kind of fell off the rails there. The roller coaster went flying off the track,
yeah.
and
Outside of the 35 seconds with those two goals, I would say the last 25 to 30 minutes sucked.
yep, totally. That is
Yeah.
that is 100% accurate. So hopefully a much better 60-minute effort coming against the Flyers on Saturday for the home opener. And then we're really going to get into the swing of things with a lot of games. We got a back-to-back coming up already on the weekend. I will be doing the Philadelphia game on Saturday, and Charlie will be covering the Tampa Bay game on Sunday. So lots of Game Over Ottawa coming your way after every single Sens game.
Go Sens go. And I wish I was doing the Flyers game instead, but I'm busy.
Oh my god. Well, I'm going to the Tampa game, so I will.
Oh
If it
yeah.
ends up being a shitty one, then we'll both be suffering because I will be there in person. So
I'll
it'll
get you
be
to call
interesting.
in on your on the drive home.
Yeah.
Just scream.
Okay. If it's a disaster, we should try to do that. Like
That would be fun.
if it's a joke of a game, like after the second period and we're getting our asses kicked, like let's try to coordinate that or something because that would be really
I
funny.
like the sound of that.
But hopefully we don't have to do that. Hopefully it's a good game and you can just have a great show and I can have a great time at the game.
Yeah, fingers
Um,
crossed. It's
we'll
all
see.
gonna be positive after that one.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's where we're going to leave it here for tonight. Thank you everyone so much for watching. It's going to be an awesome season 2 of Game Over Ottawa coming up for you. Lots of content again after every Sens game. So subscribe to SDPN if you're not, so you never miss a stream. Leave a like on the video because it helps. And thank you so much for watching and listening.